In life, it's important to have principles, a philosophical approach or belief system to life that guides you through your daily decisions. You may commonly think of this in terms of religion or politics, but you can have a philosophical approach to other things, such as the way you eat, veganism, for example, or to health, like a belief in Eastern or Chinese medicine. In simple terms, we're talking about a set of guidelines that you take in order to complete an action in the best way that works for you. Through a philosophical approach, you are guided through a set of behaviors which allows you to better understand and explain the things around you. Explanation is the key part. Having a philosophical approach to operational management provides you with the principles, the reasoning, and the justification for why you are operating the system a certain way. It helps you explain the technology to other stakeholders in the company. You are the manager of the system, but you are also a translator in a sense. You need to translate marketing plans and campaign designs into system language of programs and workflows. And how well you can translate will in turn affect your success in the role and your ability to grow your own career. If you can clearly and concisely explain the effects of their ideas, strategies, and decisions on the execution and thus results of marketing activities, you'll be able to get a seat at the table. Before we dive in, I did want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Moni Oluide. I am currently the Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Fidelis Cybersecurity. I have over 15 years of experience in the marketing technology space, and I have expertise with such tools as Eloqua, Marketo, HubSpot. I'm also the co-organizer of a MarTech community group called DC Marketing Tech Talks, where we spotlight actual marketing practitioners who share best practices on using and optimizing technologies, as well as the latest in growth and demand generation tactics that help companies grow. You can find us at dcmarketingtechtalks.com for all of our online content, and you can find me on all socials at my name, Moni Oluide. The role of marketing operations can feel like a jack of all trades type of job. The role of a marketing operations professional can be one of a Swiss Army knife. It requires many skill sets. I mean, you have to be analytical, a go-getter, someone who's inquisitive or curious, and someone who's an independent thinker, but also a team player. You have to be adaptable to many different scenarios. So many things come at you constantly. Nearly every marketing function requires your input in order to execute. Website input, content management, campaign building, social media, data analytics. I mean, we even have some technical skills like HTML, JavaScript coding, some web development, some CMS management, some project management, and the almighty CRM. I mean, you do so much, you know so much. You're highly skilled, but yet barely visible. Operations professionals can sometimes get stuck or pigeonholed into only operations, and that's it. I mean, are you invited to discussions about messaging? Are you in meetings about branding, product discussions, customer success meetings, sales strategy meetings, etc.? If the answer is no, then you most likely need to work on your communication skills along with internal stakeholder management. If you want to get a seat at the table, you need to communicate your value better. To become better communicators, we need to become better learners. And the best way to learn something is to break it down to its foundational principles. What does it even mean to have a philosophical approach to operational management or system management? Look, philosophy is just the act of attaining knowledge. Your philosophical approach is the way in which you go about attaining said knowledge. Your philosophical approach to operations is about how you best learn the system you're operating. As we all know, we need to be continuously learning these systems as they evolve. Also, it's about how do you use your knowledge and experience in the system to manage it to the best of its abilities? How do you make it function effectively and optimally? And finally, how do you learn the system so you can become an expert in the system? Once you're an expert in something, it becomes much easier to explain the value of your actions as well as the benefits or detriments of other people's actions, which is just as important. Before we go into the three most common operational approaches, by the end of this presentation, I do want you to be able to identify Your philosophical approach to marketing operations. All right, one more thing before we deep dive in. We're going to be evaluating these approaches based on the core functions of marketing operations, right? What are the characteristics of each core function within each approach? So first is people. How do you manage the users of the system? How do you manage the key stakeholders of the business, like the CMO, the CEO, the Salesforce admin, in relation to the system? How involved are they in the day-to-day operations? How much do they know about what's actually going on in the system? Next is process. How do you set up and manage the processes that function within your system? How do you set up or structure your campaigns and workflows? So this is like campaign management, lead scoring, lead management, lead lifecycle management, etc. Next is technology. How do you keep your system running effectively without too much impedance? This is the day-to-day or routine management of the system. How do you maintain the system's health and functionality? And finally is data. How do you manage the data? How do you manage the data in terms of its different use cases? So like analytics, personalization, sales insight, compliance and regulations, so on. What's your approach to managing the health of the database? All right, the first approach is robustness. With a robust approach, you want to move or execute quickly. You want to be able to scale quickly as well. People might only associate this approach with startups or small businesses, but you can use this approach for any size business. If you're expanding quickly into new markets, or if you are a part of a merger acquisition. This approach works best for people who like to move quick and be agile. The goal of a robust approach is to have a system that will perform optimally under constantly changing conditions. So how do you handle people? Your approach to personnel management is all hands on deck. Third-party, outside consultants, other vendors, other internal departments, internal stakeholders, whoever. The idea here is fish your own food. Pull your own reports, access your own leads, design your own emails. Many people have access to the system, but a lot has to be done, so you need all hands on deck. The downside here is that people have their own way of management, so you could end up with like different management structures, say like different naming conventions, right? The upside here is that there's never a single point of failure, so issues can be handled quickly. For process, the processes in a robust system are established, but not very well documented. You're moving quickly, so you don't have time to document every little thing. One or few people manage the actual system or own the processes within the system, so things might get enforced haphazardly. The process is more of a template or guide instead of step-by-step instructions that must be followed to a T. This is by design. In order to be agile and move quickly, you must give people the ability to have liberties to do as they need. This is the key to being able to withstand the changing conditions within a robust operational approach. Your users become subject matter experts, and thus, with the team approach, the system is protected from failure. As for the technology, the system itself is not very well organized. Different owners lead to different system management styles. However, campaigns and workflows can be executed very quickly. The downside is the quickness can lead to more errors or mistakes, but given the open access of the system, any errors or failures can be quickly addressed or corrected as to not occur again. The data in a robust system is not very well structured or organized at a global level. The data is in a robust approach is managed on a campaign level. Again, speed of execution being the priority here. This mentality is more of a execute today's task today, we'll worry about tomorrow later type thing. So for the positives of this approach, you're going to be able to execute marketing activities very fast. You're going to be able to adjust on a dime. You're going to have the ability to be more current, more forward thinking, be ahead of the curve. Some of the consequences to a robust approach is that the unstructured, unorganized nature of the system can be detrimental if not properly managed. For example, if you start adding tools to the stack, the integrations may get unwieldy quickly because there's not enough structure or organization in place to properly integrate systems. To make a robust approach work, you need to evaluate your system and processes either biannually or annually to make sure your processes still match your business needs and your system isn't getting too unorganized or messy, slowing down its functionality. If you are more of a creative person or if you are not very detail oriented, this approach may be for you. Our next approach is one of reliability. A reliable approach is a proactive approach. It's well planned, well designed. In a reliable approach, you try to make things as fail-safe as possible before launch and execution. So in this approach, you map a strategy, you get buy-in, you make a plan, you review the plan, you build the best practices, you test, you QA, you have a post-review process, so on. A lot goes into making a system reliable. It requires constant updating of processes and documenting and making improvements. It takes continuous effort to make a system reliable. For people with a reliable approach, you only provide system access to essential users, and they only get access to the parts of the system they're required to be in. As far as process, in a reliable approach, you have established policies and procedures for all major processes. These processes have been discussed and agreed upon by all major stakeholders within the organization. Designated project management and structured documentation is a key characteristic in a reliable system approach. There are no ambiguities in a reliable system. The users know where to go, what to do, and how to execute a given task. And these processes are heavily enforced, which could lead to a downside of this approach, which is that it can be too rigid, thus slowing execution. For technology, there is usually a lot of automation going on in a reliable system. You have a lot of variables to account for in order to make a system reliable. Like you have to make sure the data is constantly clean, the integrations are functioning properly at all times. You have multi-level reporting structure. So automation is used to scale the management of the system. The execution of campaigns and workflows generally goes well because dependencies and variables have been well thought out and adjusted for when they occur. For the data is managed well within the system, but when you have to consider additional system integrations or non-marketing sources of data, this causes discrepancy in processes. So for example, what's the system of record? How is the incoming data structured? Does it match my processes of structuring data? Is the data incoming inaccurate? How many other systems does the data need to go to after my system? So on and so forth. These can have conflicting processes with yours. And this can also lead to over automating the data management. So for example, you have way too many fields because you need to capture way too many data flows to make the data processes work. For the positives, a reliable system functions very well. There is assurance in reliability. With technology, there's always the fear of it not working, right? In a physical sense, like it's going to break or malfunction, but also in a business sense, like we paid all this money for this tool and we're not getting the value out of it. You're not likely to get that sentiment either way in a reliable system approach. Also, if the system is critical to your business, then you want to make it reliable. If the system breaks or fails and that puts your business to a complete halt, then maybe reliable is the approach for you. Some of the consequences of this approach. So outside of the system admins, other users don't really learn the system. They just execute. They just follow instructions. So if something goes wrong, they're kind of useless. Additionally, reliable systems are most affected by outside variables such as personnel changes, turnover, sales requests, business changes like messaging or logo updates. The thorough nature of this approach means things move very slowly. Quickly changes or on-the-fly adjustments are not very well handled in a reliable system approach. To make this approach work, though, you cannot have a single point of failure. You know, I've seen a lot of companies, and no matter the company size, usually one person is rigidly tracking or enforcing the process in a reliable system. It's important to have more than one subject matter expert. Reliable systems take a lot of management. It works better when that's done by a team and not just one person. As far as personality types, if you're a thinker, you're a planner, you're well organized, if you like being methodical, then this approach may be the one for you. Our third and final approach is one of resilience. A resilient approach is one that's going to function well no matter what is happening inside or outside of its environment. Resilience means you accept the things that are outside of your control. You accept that things are outside of your control. You focus more on what you can control and making that as strong and efficient as possible. This could mean rejecting the request of the business if it impedes the operational functionality of the system. You put the needs of the system first because you know that's how it will perform best. For people, the system is open to whoever needs access to it. However, these people are required to have training on the system. Its functions and its purpose are used to the business, and they are provided access to continued knowledge, education, and training on the system as it evolves and updates. For process, with a resilient approach, processes are guidelines and templates, but unlike in the robust approach, these guidelines are documented and enforced. This still allows for flexibility for users within the system. So, for example, an application of this may be you have strict guidelines for naming conventions, campaign statuses, and lead source application, but everything else within the campaign build is up to the individual user. With the technology, you have a very efficient and healthy system because that is the main priority of a resilient approach. So this requires routine maintenance and review of the system's health markers like data integrity, speed of execution, ability to produce results, etc. You monitor things like support to ticket response time or when you will be on the latest version of the software. This is how you evaluate if the system is functioning properly. And finally, on the data, with a resilient approach to data, that means that the data is relatively clean, but the health of the data is very, very good. So you can easily identify kind of the good data from the bad data within the system. So outside data sources are closely scrutinized, and you have routine processes for managing things like bounces, junk data, unsubscribes, things like that. For the positives, the idea with a resilient approach is that if the system is healthy, then it will naturally function well and execute well. The beauty is that it can withstand nearly anything. It just keeps rolling no matter what's thrown at it. The system may not be the best ever, but it will always get the job done. For the downsides, when a system is resilient, it requires constant monitoring. This is how crises are avoided within a resilient system approach. It's constantly looking for issues and things that may not be working properly. You're looking for things to fix before they break. With this approach, if you're more technical or if you're analytical but not as detail oriented, or if you're very assertive and have a take charge personality, this approach may be the one for you. Before we wrap up, I did want to clarify some things. Some of you may be asking, can you grow into an approach? So like say start out robust and then graduate to resilience. So these aren't necessarily scales. It's not like, 1, 2, 3. These are independent approaches, but you can always change or evolve your approach. That's part of learning, right? This is your own personal philosophy. You do have to work kind of within the business. You can adapt within that, but for each approach, right, the goal of the system is to function well. So there's not like one's going to fail you. This is really about what works best for you, the operator, the owner of the system. That's how you're gonna do your best. When the person and the environment match, that's when you get optimal performance. And the one other thing to clarify is like, can you take elements from each philosophical approach and merge approaches? So you can take elements from each, sure, but it really is important to have a main focused approach, right? Principles are principles for a reason. Think of these more as stages that you can grow into and out of, and not a hodgepodge set of guidelines where you take a little from here and there, right? These approaches lead to optimal performance. So mixing them just slows your progress towards your goals, really. And then just final thoughts. Look, knowledge is power. Having an approach will allow you to speak truth to power, okay? Think about any time you ever changed or developed a new set of beliefs around something. Didn't it enhance the way you learned or consume knowledge, right? You could elevate the communication of its value. You wanted to grow because of it. You know, if you have an operational philosophy, you'll be able to learn the system so much better and faster, allowing you to have conversations around the marketing approach and not just the technical approach, because you're the authority, right? So there's so much more we can dive into this topic. Obviously, there's layers to it, but with the time, I just wanted to give you an overview. Hopefully, a lot of that made sense. If not, if you want to have a further conversation, please reach out to me on socials. I'm more than happy to discuss this with you. And thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.